All right, so we're live, and everybody can see our screen well. Excellent. Well, again, thank you for joining us today. Today, this webinar is Organizing Your Vision, and we're going to be talking about gross margin strategy and how this ties in, how our business side of what we're doing ties into food safety. But before we go into that, I want to introduce everyone to my business partner, René Yard. And this is really a great opportunity for Control Point to grow and reach out to everyone that we're helping out in a whole new way. And René actually helped me out when I was with the Cosmopolitan Las Vegas in a really special way, and she helped me grow the butcher program that we had for the entire facility. And so, René, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you for letting me be a part of this exciting business and giving me the opportunity to work with all of you today. So one of the first things that Trevor and I were talking about is something called gross margin, not from a math equation or from an accounting concept, but one of the things that I've been working on is how to use all of these building blocks in business as strategies to increase profitability, which is the reason why we're all in business today. Look, we all get creatively inspired, but we also need to put food on our family's table. This discussion is going to support your creative process while creating the financial results you need to be able to do this as a business instead of a hobby. Doesn't that sound fun? What does it cost to be a craftsman? And what can I do in such a way that can I do this in such a way that I can support my family? With over 30 years in the industry, I've been focusing on opening, building, and maintaining the financial health of businesses and working with craftsmen, everything from a single outlet to large corporations, to answer just that question. How can I do what I love and also make money at it? So today, you see on the screen right in front of you, you actually see this is nothing more than a math equation. Revenue minus cost of sales equals gross margin. What we're going to talk about today is what is it really, what does it mean, why is it important, and how to strategically utilize it in your business. So from the first webinar, you see a screenshot of what was covered when we started talking about product lines. What I want to do today is, along with my business partners, I would like to dive into two of the 3 points that were made from this slide. Number one, usable product for primary and byproduct yield, and number 3, marketable price structure. And yes, as you noticed, I completely skipped over number 2, which is labor and time management, because that could turn into a whole other session, and we plan on doing a webinar for just that in the near future. When we start talking about usable product for primary and byproduct yield, there's really 2 platforms we're talking about. One is a financial platform. The other is a social platform. When I talk about financial responsibility, you look at the more you make from one investment or one product, the higher the turn. So if I spend $400 on a unit of cost of sales and I get $500 for it, I'm not going to make as much money that if I actually buy that and actually were able to create $800 from it. That's all that means. So it's not your total cost of sales number, it's just your investment of one product. Number 2, the goal of business is to increase profits, right? That's why we're all trying to do this. We want to create profitability for our business, for our owners, and for ourselves. And 3, how can I do what I love and make money? How do I get to do this so that I can get up every morning and go and do something that I love instead of having to have a job that supports this as a hobby? In today's society, social responsibility has become one of the cornerstones of business. And with the increase of globalization and all of the pieces that the world has looked at today, social responsibility is a very large platform when being in business. First of all, it's the scarcity of the quality of raw materials, right? Your goal in business is to increase profits, but the scarcity of raw products you have to take into account when you decide what you're going to make. 2, using what you take is an ethical conversation, but it also is something that many people that are actually going to frequent your business, they care about it. So you showing social responsibility is a way for you to capture a segment of business. And like I said, number 3, globalization. Reduction of the carbon footprint. One of the things that we've seen in this return to local purveyors is the reduction of quote-unquote food miles. The carbon footprint that your business creates today includes if you buy product from the other side of the world and you are actually having it shipped in or trucked in or flown in, those are part of the cost of the cost of your business. And in order to go back to local purveyors and reducing that carbon footprint just shows a level of social responsibility that today's consumer feels is important. So with the business lesson being over, I'm going to turn it over to Trevor, who's going to actually apply this to the business.
And I encourage everyone to ask questions. We are going to do a Q&A session towards the end. And Aaron Oster, who is a very dear friend of René and I and ControlPoint. We've been working together for several years, and Aaron was actually the one that put together the first webinar slides as well as the spreadsheet that we used for some of these examples. So on that note, who are our primary and secondary raw material suppliers? And I ask that in terms of food safety. Who is going to meet our food safety compliance so that we can have a safe product? And when that vendor can't deliver that, who's going to be that second raw material supplier? And that brings us into our prerequisite programs. But in this, we need to have vendors that can always meet our approved supplier program. And your vendors are your service providers. You set the food safety expectations, and for instance, when we buy product from a vendor and we're trying to make a not heat-treated shelf-stable product, I can help validate my processes by getting a certificate analysis that says that this product is pathogen-free. And I'm able to create that relationship with that supplier so that that cost is also on their part, because I'm able to help give them business. And it doesn't always work out that way, but in many cases we hope that it will. And consistency of product, not so much a food safety aspect, more of a quality aspect, but we need consistent product so that we can be able to produce consistent product for our consumers that are buying it. Also, the social responsibility. Do your vendors support your social responsibility? Do your farmers have the same ideas to help support your business? So our usable product or our raw material is so important because this is a prerequisite program. And prerequisite programs are the foundation of your food safety management system. So we talked about raw materials in terms of finance and business aspect, and now this is where we can tie everything together. Purchasing programs are a prerequisite program, as we've said. And when we're able to provide solid prerequisite programs to our food safety management system, overall we can provide a safer product. But what does this cost? What do these raw materials cost? And we're only interested in the mise en place, the things in place. So the spices, the meat, or grain for brewing beer, or cultures for cheese, whatever it may be. So we're not interested in labor, as Renee said before, and we aren't interested in packaging either. So the recipe cost is the cost of goods sold, or COGS.
So you just brought everything back, Trevor, if you just noticed. So what we talked about, and as we apply it to business, it is, if we looked at that last slide right on, if you flip right back, you notice that whole conversation, the very bottom thing, your recipe cost, right, is your cost of goods sold. That is the number we're talking about. Not the total cost to run the business, but what is the cost to create, the direct cost to create that revenue. Recipe cost is equal to cost of goods sold. It has nothing to do with the packaging the bag that you're going to put it in as the customer's going to leave. It really is just the cost of that material. And like I said at the very beginning of the conversation, it's not the full cost of goods sold, it's the cost of one specific item. And I want to make a point of that, so when we go into the next piece, that makes it'll come in. At this point, I'd like to stop, take a deep breath, and see if anybody has a question, because if you notice, gross margin is two pieces, revenue and cost of sales. Cost of sales, we've just covered what that is.
Okay, we have a few really great questions here.
Oh, great.
How does consistency affect food safety? Well, first and foremost, consistency is more of a quality aspect than a food safety aspect. But if we imagine a chicken breast and we're cooking it on the grill, the thinner part is going to cook faster than the thicker part. So that's how consistency in size could dictate the food safety aspect, because under federal regulations, we have to meet a specific internal temperature for a specific amount of time. Question 2, does my ability to effectively cost my products or my mise en place have anything to do with food safety? At this particular point, we're only interested in what the cost of raw material is, and we really don't feel that food safety is tied into the cost of the product. But as we get down the line, you'll see that we need to effectively make money so that we can effectively invest in our food safety management system. We have to pay our employees, we have to buy the chemicals, there's a preventative maintenance program, we need to maintain the vehicles that we ship the products to our consumers. Question 3, where do I draw the line between staff training and required training? Well, not everyone who's a part of your staff is going to work in your production room or shipping product to work as a receiver or even a delivery driver. But everybody should take a part in food safety, and you should have an interdepartmental food safety team. What does that mean for us? Well, I want somebody from my food safety management system to be a part of the delivery, the receiving, the warehouse, the maintenance facility program, because that creates a stronger food safety culture for everybody when we can distill those things throughout the entire building. Another question, that chicken breast, is this something, hold on one second, we lost, we can scroll back up. Yeah, that chicken breast, is that something I need to document, or is that something that my cook should be trained on the line? Well, what does that food safety management system say for you? And we're not really talking about food service, so don't imagine yourself cooking on a line in terms of a restaurant. We're cooking chicken breast for a ready-to-eat, heat-treated chicken that we're going to put on a salad. You know, we're going to make it for an Albertsons or Smith's or somebody of that matter. Or we're just going to put it in our retail case. But what does your food safety management system say about taking the temperature? Does it say qualified individual, trained individual? Does it say specifically Trevor is going to take that temperature? Well, you need to do what your food safety management system says. HACCP is saying what you do and doing what you say. All right, moving forward.
So the next part we're gonna tackle goes back to the first webinar and number 3, where we reference a marketable price structure, which is what we were talking about. It's your market basket. What is a market basket? It's the product that you're going to produce with that unit of raw product. And I keep saying this word unit. As we go further, you understand that the unit of raw product will come into play more. 2, it's the quantity of each product that is going to be produced with the unit of raw material. And 3, it's the projected cost you can sell it for. Much easier if we look at the next slide.
All right, so market basket. We have our cost of goods sold, our COGS. So it's what you bought, and this is where you're going to apply your creative momentum. So if we buy hogs, we're talking about, and these are particular cured meat examples. We're talking about hams, copa, lonza, salami, bacon, pancetta. If we're talking about beef, we can apply fresh cuts. We could do fresh cuts with hogs as well. We can make beef salami. We could produce tallow, or even dog treats. The pet food business is actually booming very well. If we had a game ham, we could sell it whole. We could make pâtés, airline breast, or thighs. So let's apply these numbers to a scenario using a specific hog, since meat has really been the focus of the last webinar, and I think a lot of majority of who we have here today are butchers and meat manufacturers, as well as retail butchers. All right, so we have 2 hams in a hog. We have 2 bellies. We have a variable amount of salami. We have 2 loins. We could make 4 depending on the size of lonza that you're creating. We could also do 2 copas or shoulders. And these particular items, and these are average pounds, so these weights are not something that we have taken specifically from an operation. These are just numbers we put together on a spreadsheet to give you an idea of your market basket, your revenue. So if we times the weight by the price per pound, we get a revenue of $360. And not to read down the line, but once we add all this revenue up, our market basket or revenue is $2,160. Now imagine that we took a 200-pound pig to make these products at $400. That's it. It cost us $400 for a 200-pound pig, which is actually a great price.
So Trevor, let me ask you a question, and this is where the strategy starts coming in. What if we could take the 6-ounce portions and reduce it to a 5-ounce or 4-ounce portion, but keep the same price? Here's what I mean by that. We understand who our business is. We understand that when we are selling to a retail customer, we're not going to be able to mark up as high as we want. So we actually create value, and we sell a lot more at 6 or 8-ounce pieces. But what if we could find a wholesale customer that's in the banquet business that's willing to pay that $6, but it's not for 6 ounces anymore. It's for 5 ounces or 4 ounces, because the labor that it costs for him to cut it in-house is more expensive than buying it from you.
So to answer the question quite simply, we would be able to increase our gross margin if we were able to take that 6-ounce breast and sell it for the same price at $6 a piece and reduce it to a 5 or even a 4 ounce. And this would be more applicable to like a catering setting or even food service in many aspects, or even to retail butchery. In many cases, we sell the product for a price per pound. So maybe you're running a special.
And here's the crux of the conversation, like I said in the beginning. Herein lies how to use this mathematical calculation to create business strategy. So
we have another question here, and this is a really good question because I think that this is something that Aaron and I talk about a lot, as well as other people, students that I have in HACCP classes or even clients. But the question is, would I need to understand yield before revenue? And I think, Renee, this is a great opportunity for you to speak on this one.
And Trevor and I look at each other and start laughing. Why is that, Trevor? Because you and I have had this conversation many, many times. So, yielding is great, and yielding is something that is very, very instrumental in the butchery business. Financially, I don't care. Oh my God, I actually said that. Financially, I don't care, and here's why. The business strategy, right, which I'm talking about, the cost of sale is $400. The cost of sale has nothing to do with how many pounds I bought, what it's going to reduce to, how it's going to change in a price per pound. Now, where it does become extremely important is where the financial responsibility of the business and the creative momentum come together. That's in your market basket. That's in your yield. The more you yield, more usable product you can create from that piece of raw material, the bigger the revenue number. The bigger the revenue number, the higher the gross margin.
So on that note, when we have a higher gross margin, we're able to put more money aside for insurance. We're able to pay ourselves, which is a huge aspect as a business owner. We're running an operation, but if we can't put money aside for the things we need to invest in, like our food safety management plan, maybe we need to hire some help through the opening processes, we have to pay off everybody towards the end of this. So increasing our gross margin is very important to the entire business, especially for food safety, because we have to pay for tests from certified labs, we have to buy more raw material, and in most cases, you have to pay those people on the spot until you build up a relationship with them and credibility, and then you can kind of extend your terms, which has always been a challenge for all of us in any business, especially for food manufacturing.
So what I just said a few minutes ago, it's a very provocative statement. So does anybody have any questions or want to maybe talk a little bit more about why the yield in the cost of sales side of the conversation is not applicable and where yield applies to the revenue side?
So having this time for creative discovery, sorry, this is a question. So having this time for creative discovery seems important, but I'm already running my business. Can I steer the boat while it's moving?
Absolutely. That's what our business is all about. See, that's the beautiful part of the food and beverage business is our business never really goes into a mature or decline phase of a normal business cycle because the creative momentum and the craftsmen that actually run the business, they're always thinking, they're always dreaming up new things. So our business is always in either the learning and growing phase or in the implementation phase of the business. It's never going to go into maturity. So now that you guys understand why we're talking about gross margin, which is this interesting conversation as a math example, in front of you, you have a gross margin example. So that revenue, remember that market basket we were able to create? We said based on what Trevor chose to create from that hog, he could make $21.60. We also understand if we bought that hog and all we were going to do based on what we do in our business, maybe all we were going to do is just buy the ham from it, and the rest we were just going to go to waste with it. So then the ham would be $360, and you would have a gross margin of negative, right? And, you just go down the line. If all we wanted to do is make salami, it would only be $1,200, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did is we showed when you try to fully utilize a product, you can create $2,160 for that $400 HACCP. Gross margin is $2,160 minus $400, which is $1,760, or an 81.5% margin. 1,760 divided by 2,160. Now, here's the question. Always the question. Well, is that good? Because a number is just a number. There's no energy around it, right? So why is the percentage important, and what number should we be striving for? Well, it depends on your business. It depends on if your gross margin is 50% and you need to pay expenses beyond that amount of money. So you have $1,760 from this thing. You still have to pay rent. You still got to pay your staff. You still got to pay for your retail packaging materials. You still got to pay for your professional services. So the percentage is important because you have to strategically choosing what you are going to invest in, your cost of sales, what you're going to create with it, creates the amount of money for which to pay everything else in your business, including yourself. So there's also a different conversation. We are talking about one specific item, and we're talking about the margin on one specific item. If you plan on having a very diverse product line, then a smaller margin on more items will create the same desired profit for the business. It really comes down to what can you efficiently produce without, what can you efficiently produce with the amount of labor and expenses you currently have in your business. You've got 3 people and you've got a shop that's a certain square footage, you're not going to be able to overly extend, and that's where this margin becomes important.
And a great example of that is one of our clients had a staff of 4. That's it. They were not going to ever be able to get another helper. It was, other than 2 particular people that ran sanitation. Now that's a really small shop, but it wasn't a retail aspect. It was a very small food manufacturing operation. So to increase our gross margin with the products that we were making, we were able to invest in equipment that could help increase our production throughput. And that helped show that with the same amount of staff, we could increase the gross margin.
Yep, absolutely. So here's a question. So what if I want to make $13K a month after expenses, and how can gross margin help me do that? Well, go back to my notes. Well, let's do the math. I need $13,000 a month, right? And what is $13,000 a month? $13,000 a month is the amount of money I want to make. So if I take $13,000 and let's say that I am going to create a gross margin for every unit of production of $2,000, then if I take 13 divided by 2, I get 6.5 carcasses a month. So if I say, do I have staff to produce 6.5 or to butcher 6.5 carcasses a month into that production cost? Does it sound like a lot of production? Will you need to employ additional staff or resources to handle that level? Well, there's 2 components of gross margin that produce in the 6.5 carcasses per month, which goes back to the conversation we were talking about earlier. If you can actually make a gross margin of $4,000 per month, then you only have to do half the amount. That's when Trevor starts talking about bringing technology into the business or using as much of that carcass and maximizing your revenue potential per unit of cost is where this is a strategic component of the business.
And to touch base on technology in terms of food safety, when investing in this equipment, you can find so much more to offer from a more sanitary equipment on a manufacturing side. So I feel like food service, and this is just my opinion, but food service equipment is very limited to just, at least in the state of Nevada, items that have an NSF sticker on it. In most cases, the health department does not like it if it doesn't have an NSF sticker, which you can go through processes to get it approved. But on the other side, we can also invest in technology like cloud-based systems to help organize our entire food safety management system, and they can tell us if we are getting off track, if we're more likely to have a critical error or not meet a critical limit in our process. So here is another question. I guess this is more of a statement. I see the connection, the use of the entire animal, and the more creative my production to waste less, the higher my gross revenue. Right? That was exactly the point that you were making.
Exactly the point. Thank you very much. I'm glad that, so exactly. Yield is extremely important, but it's important on the revenue side, where the cost of sales side is really just the check you wrote to the vendor. So absolutely, and that is the connection between, and that's why this part of the food and beverage industry is so fascinating. You know, almost every other part of the food and beverage industry is, well, it's not partly, it is more widgets. You buy X and you produce it and you put it in there you put it on the menu and you sell it. Where there's so many creative ways that you can use the same unit and nothing ever is the same size, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, that's exactly it. So just to recap gross margin. So right, the gross margin strategy is to increase the revenue per full piece of raw material to increase the margin, leading to a lesser production need, balance of operating expenses. And I read that verbatim, Dip, because that's really, really what I want to make sure that what I am saying today is really hitting home. If you increase the revenue per full piece of raw material, you will increase your margin, and therefore you will increase the profitability for your business. Number 2, reduce the cost of material by creating more usable sales per piece of raw material. So going back to that, cost of sales will always be $400. But if I can sell 17 pieces, or I can sell, on average, when I finish all those things, I can sell things at $10 a pound. My average price is $10 per pound. But on the cost side, if I actually am able to expand my usable product, then I have more pounds that I can divide by $400 and say my average cost per pound was X. And you actually can make it anywhere from your average cost per pound of being $5 down to $1. It just depends on how you create your market basket. Any questions?
And if you have any questions as you review these slides on your own time, or you share them and use this opportunity to talk to your peers, please don't hesitate to reach out, email us. A few of you who have actually gone through a HACCP course with me, I've always encouraged everybody to reach out as they've gone through their processes, especially when they're going through it on their own and not really investing in outside help. So again, we encourage you to ask questions.
So this slide right here, this is just like the simple back of the napkin response. So just in review, what is gross margin percentage? It's the gross margin divided by the selling price example. So the selling price of the unit is $3,000. We're picking just wild numbers right now, just so you can see it. So the selling price of all the units is $3,000. The cost of raw materials is $1,000. Take 3,000 minus 1,000, you get 2. So the gross margin is 2. And you take 2,000 divided by 3,000, and that creates a 67% gross margin percentage. So gross margin is the dollars. Gross margin percentage is the percent that you're going to actually pull down into the rest of your operating expenses.
So now let's apply this to our industry. And this, when I say our industry, again, this isn't specific just to the meat business. It could be produce, it could be beverage, yogurt, cheese, anything. So our cost of goods, our raw material. When we say raw material, we're also thinking of our prerequisite program. And in that, this is when we talk about what we want to make out of those raw materials, this is where we would apply our product description, which is one of your preliminary steps to your 7 HACCP principles. So who am I going to sell this to? What am I going to make? What is the process category? Is this a raw, not ground item? Is it a not heat treated, shelf stable? Is it heat treated, not shelf stable? And then I go into my critical control points off of my flow diagram. Where do I need to control those points? And then what are those limits? How am I monitoring them, etc. So that's why and how this is applied so much to the food safety side. So food safety and business are really connected. In other ingredients, we have other costs like twine. We also have paper, packaging, labels, etc. Those things are our other costs, which we wanted to leave out of the conversation prior. So, another comment. This really helps me to understand how to make business decisions. Absolutely, you should use these particular, for lack of better words, direction. You should use.
Well, it's just a strategy, Trevor, right? I mean, that's all it is. And here's the really cool part. If you use this as a strategic method in your business, nobody's telling you how to run your business. Nobody's telling you what you can create or what you look. If you want to create salami and you don't want to be in the fresh hand business, have at it. It has nothing to do with that. This is just a opportunity to understand how you can take the investment of money you put into a piece of raw products, what you're going to create, and if it financially works. And like we said before, not all products are going to give you an 80% margin. Maybe there is a love for creating an item that only has a 5% margin. That's okay, because if your product line is long enough that overall we have about a 70% gross margin, well, a 70% gross margin, now you understand that if you have 50%, you still have 50% to invest in labor, operating expenses, rent, CAM, all that kind of stuff. There's 50%. You've got a 20% profit margin and for you and your shareholders.
Absolutely. And for another example of this, if we have, say we have spinach in produce in a manufacturing facility, and we're going to cook spinach down. Most of us know that when we cook spinach down, there's so much water retention in that it doesn't really become a lot in volume. So when you start out with a bag of spinach, it shrinks down to a very low quantity. So we in that aspect, that wouldn't be a great gross margin, but if we had other product lines that were made out of spinach that we could expand on, then that's where the balance would happen.
So I think that's where we are. So that's the cost of sales, and then the revenue. Basically, like we said, it's the basket of products, and it's the strategic decision of what to make from that.
That's it for our webinar today, but we're going to pass this off to Aaron Oster. He's got a few things that he wants to touch base on, and I actually said that he was going to handle a lot of the Q&A, but we use this time to answer them through the slides. But our next webinar will be an intro to labor. So more than just paying your salaries and what is your strategy. this will be a great opportunity to dive deeper into your business and applying food safety in conjunction with the two, how those two gears work together. So Aaron, if you're ready, I'm going to pass you off.
Thanks, Trev.
And you're online, sir.
Thanks, guys. Sorry if I sound a little bit congested. I'm finishing up a head cold here. This is a really incredible conversation that's happening. I think all of us as business owners and operators struggle with how to make decisions on a regular basis. And the reality is that if we know how to operate, sorry guys, if we know how to operate and make decisions by evaluating the data that's in our business currently, then we can make stronger decisions. And we don't have to feel like we're shooting from the hip. We don't have to feel like we're putting our hands up in the air and making questions. And that's the whole point of this, is to say, look, the numbers are there, whether for better or worse. If your business is losing money, looking at the two factors that you can control, what you're selling it for and what it costs for you to produce, are the points of which you have the most amount of opportunity of regaining that capital. There's food safety critically involved there, because the quality of your product will determine how popular it is in the market, how much of it you can sell, and what ultimately what kind of success you can find with your business as it grows. For me, the whole point of this conversation that I'm picking up on that's really fascinating is how do you justify your product mix? So in the first webinar, we talked about yielding. We talked about usable primary, secondary, and tertiary. Well, I think that approaching it from this angle tells us that the revenue, the gross revenue that we're obtaining, will give us that exact direction. It'll tell us how we can sell stuff. If we're selling a lot of bacon, that's a great call. But if we're buying whole pigs and we're only selling bacon and we're not selling hams and we're not selling covas because the customers just don't want it, then we have to look for a better way to justify our product mix. That means building a relationship with your vendor or your farmer or the processing facility. And Trev, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the critical point of addressing your food safety as well too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's that moment where you say, look, we started as a whole hog operation, but that's just not working for us. We've got too much waste. It's costing us too much to train employees. I mean, I believe in the training of employees. I'm using this as a hypothetical. We don't have enough space. Too much product is getting thrown away or dying in the case, or it's in the freezer. This is your opportunity to say, look, okay, I know I want these standards for the way my animals are raised and what they're fed. I know I want animals processed in a slaughter facility that cares for a clean and proper process and proper slaughter. Now I got to start looking for somebody who can process and just sell me bellies, who can increase my yield, which will then increase my output and allow me to focus on one product a little bit more deeply and make a better end result and ultimately be able to grow the business. I'm listening to Trevor and René speak as a business owner, and I'm saying, I know what it's like to be given a business that's not running properly and having people asking decisions of, and watching owners make decisions from the hip and trying to fix everything by guessing. And I think for the frustrating aspect for me is I'm 36. It's like I've watched a lot of people make a lot of stupid mistakes, but I'm still pretty young at this game. I don't know everything, but I can tell you that knowing these numbers is all you need to know. I mean, that's what makes sense to me. Is like just know your business. You don't even need to know. You need to know everything about your business. You just need to know how much you're making, what it costs you to produce it, and how much flexibility you have with those numbers. The other thing that I wanted to discuss here, guys, before I fully open it up, is do vendors meet your approved supplier program requirements. This is something that Trevor was talking about earlier in the presentation, and for me, I'd like a little more clarity on that. You know, we just talked about it a moment ago, but Trev, can you expand a little bit on what those supplier program requirements would be for a prerequisite? How do I, as a guy who is opening a butcher shop or a deli or a small business, food service business, how am I approaching my vendors, or I should say, the producers of my raw materials, if I'm not doing it myself?
When you go to your farmers, your vendors, the people that are supplying your raw materials, you should ask them, like, my requirements, or I want my requirements to be X. I need the pathogen level to be 0. And they can test a lot of raw materials, which is a great marketing aspect that they can use and say, hey, we're testing our raw materials. So therefore, if you use our product, which is reasonably priced, then you can have a greater food safety plan in your own operation because you know that you're bringing in pathogen-free products. Now, some of these pathogens can come into our facilities in other ways, but we're reducing the risk of something bad happening. And we've touched base on this in other webinars, but a recall cost on average of about $10 million. You have to pay lawyers, you have to pay for the lawsuits, you have to pay for new marketing strategies and all those particular things. And a lot of that can really make the business sink fast. So when we have those strong prerequisite programs, and I'm not telling you how to write your prerequisite programs, I'm just recommending that if you can get on board with your vendors to do the things that you require them to do, then it's a greater synergy between you and your vendors.
Well, let's say I live out in the middle. Let's say I live out in the middle of nowhere, okay? And let's say that I've got a small business. It's I live in a small rural community. I'm opening a butcher shop. There's good clientele. I know I can sell my product, but I have to be delicate with the vendors that I work with because they're all farmers. They're not acquainted with the level of compliance that I'm requiring for a federally inspected facility. Okay. How do you approach that situation?
Well, if testing can't be involved, think about it like this. If testing could be involved and they could send samples to a lab and they were able to create a relationship with them, instead of samples costing me $30 a piece, maybe I can get it down to $10, $15 because I'm going to be sending them samples over the course of a year. Those samples, those certificate analyses could help validate my HACCP plan and their HACCP plan in greater aspects. But if they couldn't afford the lab, the cost of the lab, the cost of the lab analysis, the testing, then they could implement antimicrobial methods, like there's PAA or lactic acid or even hot water washes, which all you have water supply, it's already tested by the city, and then you heat it up and apply it to the carcass itself. That is really a cost-effective approach because I'm already paying for water, right? And then I would pay for the electricity or the gas to whatever was going to heat my hot water.
So, in a nutshell, the way you're suggesting that this be approached is you try to create a relationship with these people. I mean, you would feel comfortable approaching them and saying, look, I'm a small business here. We love your product. We think it's amazing. We see that there's an opportunity here for both of us to be successful. Can we work together on possibly, getting you to sign on to this level of compliance or getting you to take these 3 steps? In your experience, and Renee, this is open to you as well too, and I don't know if everyone else is feeling this way, but I know that we've all worked in major metropolitan cities, and in major metropolitan cities, you can pretty much get whatever you want. If one vendor doesn't, you don't like the way the driver combed his hair that day, you can return the product, send it back, and call the next guy and have it there in 3 hours if you need it. But in the country, animals are being killed for you. You have a little bit more of a responsibility to the process and understanding the timeline. And for people that are opening businesses, it's becoming more affordable to do it outside of major cities. So do you see this as something that are you feeling positive about the development of smaller processing facilities and these relationships, or do you think that this is a big challenge for these small businesses?
It's most definitely a challenge, and I think it will always be a challenge because the larger companies really have an upper hand because they have a lot more backing, financial backing behind them. But if you can get on board with your vendor, your farmer, your supplier in a smaller community, what can the community do to support that relationship? Can I have, say my farmer doesn't have a particular way to get the animal to the processing facility to me, what can we as chefs, as butchers do to help reduce the cost of that? Can we have somebody that comes in the city more often deliver that product to us? You know, in city, I don't mean any specific size, but for instance, if there's an operation in Massachusetts and they're already coming in the city, why not put more product in the van to help reduce the overall cost?
And you know what, on another note, Aaron, it also goes back to what we talked about early on, which is really the move towards corporate social responsibility. Yes, you know what, in the big cities we can get everything, but we also see in the last 10 years a move towards trying to go green, create or reduce the carbon footprint, which is pushing your big company or your big conglomerates to really actually start using more local. So while it is a challenge for local, I think there's a big advantage because of the way the world is looking at business. And if these small town vendors, as you call them, right, look at this as an opportunity and they create the plans that they need to so that they make sure, even if they pass the cost off to the consumer of their product because they have invested in a true HACCP plan and they can market and say, look, my product is truly safe, it's certified, et cetera, et cetera. Even if they pass that cost off to their customer, the customer will be willing to accept it because if the customer buys it from you safe, it's in the variable cost of the product. It's in at $400, right? But if it's not safe, the consumer has to have a even bigger HACCP plan, which is a huge fixed cost.
Not consumer, but the further processor.
The further processor, sorry, yes.
And here's a great example of how that market, how us as consumers are driving that market. I was at a food safety conference in Reno, and there was a gentleman there from, I believe it was IBP. Well, for lack of better words, he was from a larger processor. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it was JBS. And he said that they were creating more products based on what the market was asking for. So the consumers are asking for more clarity on the labels. They want to know what is in their food. They want it to be more natural. Look at how a lot of the processors are going towards vegetable nitrates or vegetable powders for nitrates, so they don't have to label it as a cured product. Well, legally, for FSIS, you can't label it as a cured product. But my point is that even the larger groups are moving that direction. So we're really seeing a huge change because of the support of the smaller operations and the more local approach.
That's great. That's great.
Well, that wraps us up for our webinar today, and we'd really like to thank each and every one of you for joining us. We've had a fantastic turnout, and again, this has really been a great opportunity for René and I to, tell everybody, tell the world that, that Control Point is growing and this partnership is growing, and it's just fantastic. I've been looking forward to this all month. I've been so excited to share that our partnership is moving in a very positive direction. Please reach out if you have any further questions, and please give us your feedback. Even if you don't complete the survey, shoot us an email. Let us know what you want to see, what topics you'd like to see going forward. These are really for you guys. It's not a sales pitch. We're not looking for you to buy anything. We're looking to collaborate, and it's such a silly word to use today because a lot of people say that, but we don't really put any action to it. But we're here for you guys, the audience, the people that are interested in making these products. So thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll have the content online very shortly, and we'll shoot everybody an email. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.